Good evening everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we have an incredible, funny, and surprisingly heartwarming story from the world of late-night television. We're taking you inside a very memorable appearance on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, where Greg Gutfeld, the man you know today as the witty host on Fox, sat down with Jimmy to reminisce, laugh, and reveal how he went from getting fired over and over to finally finding his place. The whole exchange was a mix of hilarious bar stories, career disasters, and the unexpected warmth of family support. Let's dive into the night's unforgettable conversation. From the start, the two men immediately sparked a memory. Or more accurately, Greg sparked it because Jimmy didn't remember a thing. Greg reminded him that they had actually met before, though in fairness, both of them had been more than a little tipsy at the time. The story took us back about 15 years, to a tiny illegal speakeasy in Hell's Kitchen run by a mutual friend named Tracy, a man Greg described as looking like a cross between a Viking and a larger Viking. The bar was so small it could have been mistaken for a shipping container, and instead of a proper counter, the bar was literally just a beach cooler. Greg swore he remembered Jimmy showing up with his own beer, only to have Tracy charge him for it. That was Tracy, cheap as they come, but, as Greg joked, if you want somebody dead, he'll do it. Greg painted the scene vividly. He and his friend Andy walked into this cramped, questionable little place straight from a shoot, and there was Jimmy. According to Greg, Jimmy's eyes lit up like a golden retriever spotting its favorite human, and before he knew it, Jimmy had tackled him to the ground. What followed was an impromptu wrestling match in the middle of the bar, which eventually switched targets as Jimmy decided to wrestle Andy instead. Greg, standing off to the side, lit a cigarette, only to have Jimmy come over mid-fight, crush it in his hand, and declare, "These things will kill you." Greg was outraged. Cigarettes in New York were expensive, and Jimmy was the rich one. Yet, minutes later, Jimmy returned with a fresh pack of Parliaments, handing it over with a smile. Greg's reaction, "That was really sweet. You want me to die?" But the night didn't end there. Greg recalled Jimmy suggesting they head to another bar. They hopped into the back of Jimmy's chauffeured car. Greg, Jimmy, and a third person whose identity Greg admitted he couldn't remember, and after what felt like a ride to a new destination, they stepped out, only to realize they had simply driven from one door of the building to another. Greg suspected the whole thing was just to show off the driver. The second bar had its own quirks. It operated as a regular straight bar until 6 p.m., when it went gay, an instant transformation marked only by the bartender taking off his shirt. Greg said that's where the story ended, but both he and Jimmy laughed at the wild memory. From there, Jimmy steered the conversation toward Greg's career journey, asking how he ended up hosting his own show. Greg's answer was refreshingly blunt. "I've been fired a lot." He explained that getting fired, though terrifying in the moment, almost always led to something better. He'd been let go from Men's Health, where he'd once been the king of abs, responsible for memorable features like 5 minutes to flat abs and its sequel 6 steps to a firm belly, which, he admitted, was just a rewrite of the first article. After that came Stuff magazine, and later, Maxim Wits. He left under circumstances vague enough for him to joke, "Let's not get into that." Eventually, a chance encounter in a Chelsea bar led to an offer from Fox to host a late-night show. That show became Red Eye, which debuted after just 3 days of preparation. In the green room, with everyone, even the camera crew, slightly drunk, it aired at 2 a.m., until Fox decided it was too edgy, and pushed it to 3 a.m. Greg laughed about their target audience at that hour, speed dealers, and breastfeeders, plus a surprising number of prison inmates, who wrote him letters asking to be set up with guests. One of the sweetest parts of Greg's early career story was the role his mother played. He had made her a senior correspondent on Red Eye, mostly because she was 80. Her job was to watch Fox News and report back to him during the day, though she had a running complaint about the short skirts worn by female anchors. Greg joked, she'd say, "I don't need to see their you-know-what," and I'd tell her, "Mom, other people do." Far from being a typical, embarrassing parent, she became a hit with his friends, who often ended up hanging out with her even when Greg wasn't home. She was fiercely supportive, saw his career blossom, and remained a grounding influence in his life. Jimmy then brought up Greg's newest project, a game show called What Did I Miss? The premise was genius in its simplicity. Contestants, often people used to being in the public eye, like reality show cast members, would be completely cut off from the world for 100 days. No phones, no news, nothing. When they emerged, they'd be quizzed on whether certain outrageous news stories were true or false. The twist, Greg said, was that with figures like Donald Trump, the line between real and fake was nearly impossible to guess. The pay for this isolation wasn't exactly luxurious. $25,000 for 100 days, which after taxes, Greg joked, meant they owe us money. They wrapped up with a sneak peek at the first season, showing contestants who had been away from their families for weeks, including one father of 4 whose wife was apparently enjoying the break. The cast, Greg noted, was surprisingly sane. something of a rarity in reality TV. As the segment ended, Jimmy congratulated Greg on his success, marveling at the journey from getting fired repeatedly to becoming a staple on Fox and launching new shows. Greg, in turn, seemed genuinely grateful for both the laughter of the past and the opportunities of the present. It was a talk show moment that blended wild comedy, career honesty, and a reminder that sometimes the best stories come from the most unexpected detours.